The March 12th, 2024 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors is hereby called to order. We will move on to the land acknowledgement and Representative Student Kink. Thank you.
We respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of the Coast Salish, Snohomish, and Tulalip peoples. We express our deep respect and gratitude to the ancestors of this land on whose shoulders we stand. In Everett Public Schools, we strive to create equitable outcomes and build a culture of inclusive belonging for all students, teachers, staff, and community.
Thank you. We'll now move on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Unless you're in uniform, please remove your hats and stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Will the secretary please call the roll?
President Mitchell.
Present.
Vice President Herman.
Present.
Director Atkins.
Present.
Director Mason.
Present.
Director Revelinsky.
Present.
Student Representative Gilbertson. Student Representative Kink.
Present.
Okay. Now we move on to section 5.0, adoption of the agenda. Dr. Saltzman, were there any changes to the agenda after it was published?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. There has been one change in the agenda. Item 11.07, acceptance of the financial reports as of January 31st, 2024. Clerical error was corrected on the financial report. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Is there any objection to the meeting agenda being adopted by general consent? Seeing none, the agenda is adopted by general consent. And now we are moving on to section 6.0, literally our favorite part of the meeting. And I speak for everybody, I hope. First, the January core value champions, Miss Reeves. Sorry, it says Reeves. I'm just going to name you whatever I want to name you.
Good evening, President Mitchell, Board of Directors, and Dr. Saltzman. Actually, tonight we're going to recognize the February core value champions for integrity. And we're going to start with Principal Ellsworth with Hawthorne Elementary, and then Regional Superintendent Fleckenstein is going to cover Silver Firs Elementary, and Principal Tyler Reen will do North Middle School. And for the parents in the room, once your student gets introduced, they're going to stand up front and you'll get a chance to take pictures at the end. So we would just like to start with Principal Ellsworth.
Board of Directors, thanks for having me. My name is Jacob Ellsworth, principal of Hawthorne Elementary School, and with me I've got Avery Papalo, and he is our core values champion for integrity this month. Avery has been an amazing student. At our school, we talk a lot about soaring to success, having safety, ownership, acceptance, and respect. And he personifies all of those things. But most importantly, he takes ownership for his learning every day, the school, and he leads by example. And so if you ever come to Hawthorne Elementary School, most likely Avery's going to greet you, he's going to help you find what you need and where to go, and he's going to help you be successful at our school. And I'm so thankful to have Avery at Hawthorne Elementary.
All right, well, unfortunately, Principal Smoot had a family emergency today, so I'm going to present the Silver First student for the Core Value Award in her place. So tonight, I have the honor of recognizing Leo Shakurian, who is a kindergartner at Silver Firs Elementary. Leo, could you please come up and join me? Okay, here we go. So Leo's teacher, Ms. Forsyth, shared the following words to describe why she nominated him for the Core Value Award for Integrity. Our class would not be the same without Leo. He brings a bright smile through our door, along with great enthusiasm for learning each morning. He encourages others to be excited about their own learning. Leo is a leader and a helper. His integrity shines in his love of helping others and looks for ways to help without being asked. He's a great classmate that is helpful, kind, and encouraging to his peers. If he thinks he is doing something wrong, he'll then ask the teacher or another adult how to make it right. He has a strong sense of integrity to do the right thing, even when nobody is watching. He encourages peers to be excited about their learning without needing any direction from his teacher. Congratulations, Leo.
Well, good afternoon. Thank you for having us. My name is Tyler Ream. I serve as the proud principal at North Middle School, and I want to introduce Taylin Low Church to you. She is a 7th grader at North. She was one of 22. So we actually had 22 nominations that came forward for the month of February for integrity. And so when we got together and discussed all of the students, it was Taylin that rose to the top. And she was nominated by her teacher, Deb Carmen Jansen, who I think captures things well, and it's written right on your certificate here. So let me read it for you. It says, she is known for her exceptional integrity. She knows who she is and who she is growing to be and does not compromise that vision for her future. She is bright, caring, and honest. Taylin is a quiet leader who values the needs of others over her own. That level of selflessness is rare and consistent with her values. Congratulations, Taylin.
Okay, can you guys center in the middle and we'll have the board stand up? Kind of space out a little bit. There, oh, there you go. Perfect. There we go. Perfect. You're good. You're good. All right, 1, 2, 3. Okay, if there's any parents who want to come up and take a picture, you're welcome to do so at this time.
And for the students that we just recognized, as you continue to learn, so do I. We all make mistakes, and I apologize for the mistakes I made with that recognition. Now we're moving on to section 6.02, recognition of the Everett PTSA Council. And Dr. Woods, I believe you're starting us off.
Yes, thank you very much, President Mitchell, members of the school board, Dr. Saltzman, and members of the community. I want to thank you for allowing me to take the time here to recognize and thank our PTSA volunteers. And I know that that is very close to many of your hearts as well. I'm going to give just a minute so that those who are joining us on Zoom can be promoted up to panelists so they can see and we can see them as well. So I just want to thank everybody who is here in the room and everybody who is with us on Zoom today. Recognizing the PTA is truly a highlight for me. Tonight, I will be recognizing the PTA Council and the individual PTAs of our district. I'm going to say a few words, and then Principal Celia O'Connor Weaver, the principal of Tambar Creek, she'll make a few remarks on behalf of the principals from the perspective of this school. And then Beenish Iqbal, who is the president of the PTSA Council, will make a few remarks. We'll do a brief gift presentation, and then we'll have them all gather up here to take a picture. I so appreciate everyone being here to recognize the amazing partnership we have with our PTAs and PTSAs. There is no such thing as a great community without great schools. And there is no such thing as great schools without the involvement of our community. Our PTSA Council and individual PTAs represent one of the most important community partnerships that exists in Everett Public Schools. The people that you see in this room, as well as those on Zoom, and those unable to be here this evening, work tirelessly on behalf of the children in our community. They may have started in their schools because they wanted to make a difference in their own child's school, but their impact goes well beyond their own children. They truly impact our schools, our community, and through advocacy, our state and nation's schools. The PTA Council's strategic plan supports our district's work and advocates for a system-wide approach of innovative collaboration to support student learning. The council supports individual PTAs as they in turn support individual schools and students. This year, as in past years, our PTSA Council and our individual PTA chapters support student learning and community building. They have planned and carried out events too numerous to name, but including movie nights, popcorn Fridays, fun runs, fundraisers, PTA reflections, art celebrations, many community celebrations, and the special education PTA is sponsoring, in just over a week, they're sponsoring the PTA walk-a-thon, run-a-thon, roll-a-thon, whatever you want to do. That'll be on Sunday, the 24th. All of these organizations have provided grants for schools and have provided supports through programs like the Shoe Fund for students in need. But one of the most important functions of the PTSAs, and something that sets them apart from other parent-teacher organizations, is the exceptional work they do as advocates at the local, state, and national level on behalf of all students. PTA was founded by advocates at both the state and national levels, and they have a strong history of impacting education policy and advocating on behalf of children. They have a strong network, and they serve on behalf of our children. And those of you in PTA and PTSA, thank you for all that you do. Now I'd like to introduce Principal Celia O'Connor-Weaver, who's principal at Tambar Creek Elementary School, to speak from a principal's perspective to recognize the work of our PTAs.
Hello, Board and Dr. Salzman. Thanks for having me. First, I want to thank all of the Everett Public Schools PTSAs for supporting our schools, our students, and our staff. The events and support you provide to our current programs, whether it's for the arts, academics, or athletics, help to create a positive and caring school environment for everyone. We appreciate you. At Tambar Creek, our PTSA has a strong and positive presence all the time. They take an active role in our multicultural event, which has grown so large over the years that we now have to have it at Eisenhower Middle School. The students and families enjoy sharing their culture through music, dance, poetry, trifolds, pictures, and food samples. Our PTSA collaborates with the administrators at the beginning of every school year to calendar all our events for all our students and families for the entire school year. This year, the PTSA implemented an after-school enrichment program, many of them actually, for our students, such as art class, chess club, Lego club, coding, and more. They also had a huge fall fundraiser this year that was such a big success, they surpassed their goal of $75,000. They made $82,900. This will support our school events, field trips, our music program, fifth grade camp, and much more. I want to thank TCE's PTSA for their dedication to our school, student staff, and our school community. You are building strong relationships between our families and our school. We appreciate all that you do, and we can't do it without you. Thank you.
Thank you, Principal O'Connor-Weaver. And now I'd like to introduce Beanish Iqbal. Beanish is the president of our PTSA Council, which advocates on behalf of all our students and really works to support each individual PTSA chapter. So I'm going to let her say a few things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Woods. So on the behalf of Everett PTSA Council team, I'd like to say thank you for recognizing our small efforts today. We are fortunate to have this wonderful partnership with the Everett School District. Today, from my team, I have Vice President membership, Margaret McAdams. Margaret. We have Reflections Program Chair, Cam 2. We have Nicole McKnight, South Region, Member at Large. We have Valerie Cunningham, Member at Large, and Special Education PTSA. So all these ladies, wonderful in this room that you are looking at, these are the heart and soul of our council. They put plans into action. Thank you so much for everything you all have done. Thank you.
Thank you, Beanish. And now we have some tokens of our appreciation for all of our PTA members, and I think the other regionals will help get it in. Principals, there are flowers in the back, and PTA presidents, members, those of you that are here, if you can come up, we would love to get a photo of all of you in front of the dais with the board behind you.
And with the Zoom members as part of that picture.
Oh, look at this nice girl.
We might have to double row it. Can we double row it a little bit? Because you guys on the ends aren't going to make it.
Look at all those principals.
Maybe the last three. Nope, still not there, sorry.
Okay, so let's get to where you can be seen.
Beanish.
On my tippy toes, I'm moving it.
Well, you don't have to.
Okay, oh, got it, right there, okay, everybody smile, 1, 2, 3. Okay, I got it, you guys get it?
Right? A few more cameras.
Okay, I think we're good.
Nice job.
So let's just call it a meeting, because that was the, I think we're done. Come on. And I'm just going to correct one thing that Banesh said. You guys do great things, not small things.
I caught that too.
Yeah. We're going to pause for noise. Okay. Thank you. Just wanted to pause for let them rejoice with themselves. Section 7.0, the superintendent's report. Dr. Saltzman.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair, Board of Directors, and to the public this evening. First of all, let me publicly say, I want to thank the PTSA for all that they do every day for our students. And thank you to the students that won their awards today, and to their parents, thank you for sending us your best. Always great to see those students win those awards. I'd like to take this time right now to thank the grounds crew and custodians, especially when the weather is challenging, as we've had. I hope we are finished with the snow and ice. I think we're kind of getting close. I see some sun out there. But we could always count on our hardworking grounds crew and custodians. Their hard work and dedication is keeping everything running smoothly during the winter weather, and it is truly appreciated. They work so hard for that. Last month, we welcomed 175 students from Cascade, Everett, Jackson High School, and Sequoia High Schools to the Empowered to Lead Summit here at the Community Resource Center. Students heard from speakers and attended workshop sessions with themes surrounding forms of social justice, sense of belonging, positive action, inclusion, career and college readiness. I want to call out our diversity and equity inclusion team for organizing this dynamic event. I want all those high school students to find their joy and be empowered as they go on to their future and their dreams. Last week, we were on our team of Social Workers Week. This week, we celebrate Education Support Professionals Week. Thank you to Molly Hart, Julia King, and Aaron Jackson, our incredible school social workers. I want to give a huge shout out to our unsung heroes from nutrition to tech to custodial to transportation, because those are people you may not know about every day or see every day, but they do so much behind the scenes. Every member of our educational support team plays a vital role in shaping our students' success, and we thank you. And tomorrow, the next day, our cabinet will be out there in schools supporting our folks like we've done for the past 3 years, and we're looking forward to that as we work side by side. Also, tomorrow, our 11th grade students will be taking the SAT, and once again, it's free. So we're going out Thursday because tomorrow's the SAT. We want to just do not disrupt those high school students. It'll be a 3.5 hour late start for all other high school students. Good luck to those that are taking this important exam. We know you're going to do great, and we're very proud of you for that. Again, let me thank our entire community for all the great work that everybody's doing. Great spirit across the system the past few weeks, from sports to academics. There's so much happening, and we're very proud of it. And I want to thank everybody that works in the school system. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saltzman. Now for board comments. Director Herman, would you like us to start us off?
Absolutely. Thank you. Just two that I want to touch on, and Dr. Saltzman has already talked about the Empowered to Lead event, but I was able to attend some of that. And once again, it is just such a fantastic energy that is brought here to the CRC with students from all of our high schools. And I think there's just something that high school students bring with them, and they get jazzed up. And so it was so fun to see a glimpse of. So thank you to our DEI department on that. And I did see the slideshow online on the website, and I thought that was really well done. So if you weren't able to make it, you can check that out there. And then the second one, I was also able to stop by the Heatherwood Multicultural Night. And again, what a wonderful community event. I think when I was thinking as to what sort of made the Multicultural Night a little bit different is thinking about all of the people, the parents, the students, and the teachers that were involved in the planning of the event. Talking with one parent who had worked with their student on putting the table together in the trifold, and then the students that were doing the performances wearing their traditional clothing, and the Spanish club that was talking about the monarch migration. It was a great event. So lots more happening. Only a few have happened so far. So if you haven't had a chance to get to one, I would check your school's calendar and find a night.
Director Atkins.
Yeah, I also got the opportunity to attend the Empower to Lead event, and is my mic coming through? Okay. I also got the opportunity to attend the Empower to Lead event, and was just really amazed by the amount of students that were there and the amount of students engaged and excited and wanting to get more involved, and just it was a very good event to attend. And the only other thing I wanted to mention was the legislature passed House Bill 1879, which renames statewide the Since Time Immemorial curriculum after our late Senator John McCoy. And I think it's just a really exciting time for Indian education, and especially this bill is really exciting to see because it's going to be the first time, from my understanding, that we see a tribal language codified into state law. with the addition of John McCoy's Lachute name into state law. So just a very exciting time, and thank you. That concludes my remarks.
Yeah, thank you for that information. Director Mason?
Yeah, thank you. I also had the opportunity to participate and come see the Empowered to Lead gathering. And again, it's already been said, but what a great opportunity for our students to come together and learn together. And then the rest of my activities just been about a lot of fun and seeing the talent across our district. So I got to drop into a play and learn this past week, and talk about just a really happy place to go and a lot of energy. And I'm just so thankful that our district is able to offer that through the grants and the funding that we can get. I think it's going to have a huge impact going forward. And then the rest of the time spent watching a little Everett High basketball down in Tacoma, which was super exciting, maybe too exciting for me. And then seeing the Everett High spring production of The Addams Family, which was just so good. So lots of fun. We do get to have fun every now and then. So thank you.
Dr. Ovalinsky?
I would just like to, thank the PTSAs. I think we take them for granted a lot. Those folks really work hard, especially the leaders. The people that I know personally, I don't think they sleep. They're just so productive, and they care so much. So I'm really glad that we got a chance to see them. And then I went to Heatherwood too, and I'm kind of disappointed we didn't run into each other, but I thought it was great. Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Kink?
Yeah, so since the last meeting, Jackson had our executive ASB elections. And exec ASB is the ASB board that's comprised of all grades. And we have a really good board next year. Luckily, I got elected as ASB president, so I'll be representing the entire school next year, and I'm really looking forward to that. Also, Jackson, along with Cascade and Everett, have rolled out our new tardy system, and there's some negative feedback at first, but it's slowly become more accepted, and I think attendance is getting better too, so I'm glad that's kind of in the way now. And like Dr. Saltzman said, Jackson is hosting the SAT tomorrow, and it's a really good opportunity for juniors to boost their college apps, and a good time for the rest of the school to get some sleep. And I was also wondering if I could share Alice's comments. She sent them to me, and there's something she'd like said.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Alice also attended the Empowered to Lead Summit. She said she really liked that. She's super happy with the school spirit around the girls and boys basketball. And she also wanted to thank Dr. Saltzman for paying for the girls' basketball buses. She's looking forward to spring break, and vibes are high, and students are really happy right now. She enjoyed the Addams Family play. She'd also like to congratulate the Everett High School ASB officers, and we would both like to wish a happy early birthday to Dr. Saltzman.
Okay, so our, I guess there is a mic problem, so we are all going to have to speak up a little bit. So I just want to congratulate you on your win, ASB leader. So we will see you present in May. Wonderful. So I also had just more fun. Just really, I appreciate that Director Mason was at the Everett girls basketball games because I was at the Jackson boys basketball games. So we did divide and conquer. I did not go to Tacoma because I was out of town, but I did go to Shoreline to really, I think, see Jackson play probably their best game ever for the whole season. Those boys played their hearts out. My husband and I really have enjoyed the past 2 seasons, so I want to recognize both the boys and the girls teams, especially the girls making it to 6 in state. I mean, I think that's exceptional. But then I noticed in the Herald today, and want to congratulate the coaches from both of the schools for being named Coaches of the Year. And that congratulate Ryan McFerrin, Trey Hawkins, and Colby Cook, who were all named from the Jackson boys team. And it's been a lot of fun watching those boys the past 2 years on the varsity team. And I look forward to next season. So thank you. And we'll now move on to section 9.0, public comment. Dr. Saltzman, are there any requests for public comment?
I believe not at this time, Madam Chair.
Thank you. We will now move on to section 10.0, legislative updates. Director Herman, I think you have a number of updates.
Yes, and is this, so
Nope,
is.
talk loud.
Okay, here we go. So yes, the legislative session.
Move it over
Is
and
it
talk loud.
still,
Move
oh,
over and
into
talk
it?
loud.
Okay, thank you. The legislative session wrapped up last Thursday, and while it was a short session and the supplemental budget year, the legislature had a lot on its plate. To illustrate this, in this year, 2024, approximately 1,200 bills were introduced, and that's in addition to the bills that were carried over from the 2023 session. And so just remembering that while K-12 education is the paramount duty of the state, a lot of floor time and debate for legislators was on a variety of other important topics such as housing, clean energy, and public safety. For today's update at the meeting today, I will review some of the outcomes of the bills that line up with our 2024 legislative priorities. Two of the top ones that related to our priorities of ample and stable funding for basic education and ample and equitable funding for staffing levels and staffing costs. These two were Senate Bill 5882, increasing prototypical school staffing to better meet student needs, and House Bill 2494, increasing state funding for operating costs in schools. Both of these did pass with some modest increases. For 5882, the prototypical school funding model, the staffing ratio for paraeducators, office supports, and non-instructional aides were increased beginning in the 23-24 school year. In other words, this current year. This would be retroactive. The intent of this additional funding is to assist school districts in hiring additional support staff or providing the staff they already employ with better wages. House Bill 2494, increasing state funding for operating costs in schools. This bill updates and increases per pupil amounts for materials, supplies, and operating costs, MSOC, which includes things such as utilities and insurance, curriculum and textbooks, technology and security, and central office. I want to thank district staff for providing our data to legislative leadership during session on our increases in costs in recent years to help inform that decision making. Both of these two bills really get at some of our basic education costs, and these would apply, again, as I said, to the increases to the 23-24 year. Again, these are very incremental increases in funding, and the first month's payment after the bill is enacted should include the additional amounts from the beginning of this school year through that month. Currently, we've read in some reports it's assumed that allocations will be provided in July or August payments. Transportation. Another one of our Everett priorities was on modifying the school transportation funding model to be more equitable. We had been following a couple of bills on this that did not make it through the session and are expected to come back next session in 2025. One related bill that did pass, engrossed substitute House Bill 1248, that did pass, which requires that school district contracts for pupil transportation services require the contracting employer to provide health benefits and pension contributions equivalent to those of school district classified employees. So this would apply to Everett. This also provides supplemental allocations to districts that demonstrate higher costs because of the new contract requirements, so that should help. Multilingual education. Related to our priority of supporting multilingual education programs and services, the third substitute House Bill 1228 also passed and establishes grant programs for establishing or expanding dual language education programs and tribal language education programs. Literacy supports in service of American Indian and Alaska Native students, and makes changes to requirements related to the Seal of Biliteracy and the Transitional Bilingual Instruction Program. So that's a positive step forward for these programs, and I think we'll be seeing more of that in the years ahead. Relating to our priority of supporting ongoing, sustainable, and reliable funding for safe, healthy, and contemporary schools. In Washington State, as you know, we have the School Construction Assistance Program, known as SCAP, which is how local districts mainly get state financial support for construction and modernization projects. In the capital budget, SCAP had an increase of over $100 per square foot, increasing to $375 per square foot. So it was a step forward, although not what some people were hoping for to get to actual costs, but it is appreciated. A reminder that the SCAP funding is only available to districts that have first secured local funding for construction costs. But the increase again does bring the amount closer to actual construction, the costs that districts are seeing. To our priority of advancing access to supports and services responding to physical, mental, and emotional needs of all students. House Bill 1956 did pass the legislature. This one requires OSBI to make available substance use prevention and awareness materials for school and classroom uses, and directs OSBI to refer to opioids in the state health and physical education learning standards for middle and high school students. Additionally, related to this priority of increasing access to supports, in the capital budget for Legislative District 38, $488,000 was appropriated to the Community Health Center of Snohomish County for school-based health and behavioral health clinics. And these would be at Cascade High School and Everett High School. So that's exciting news. Edmond School District currently has 2 school-based health centers in operation, so we look forward to hearing from them about their experience. Those are some of the bills that were in line with our priorities this last session and are now on the governor's desk, so to speak. We want to once again thank our legislators for their work in Olympia and especially their work around children and education. We look forward to working with them in the interim. We have already started to look ahead to the next session, and some of the topics and themes that are predicted in the 2025 session include special education funding is still going to be coming back as anticipated. This session, the state's investment in special education came from increasing the cap from 15% to 16%. So that does not have a current impact for us here in Everett. We anticipate there will continue to be discussions around how students are identified for special education services and whether districts are possibly over or under identifying students. Another theme that we are expecting next year to come back is graduation requirements. This year we saw bills that would increase graduation requirements, including 1915, making financial education instruction a graduation prerequisite and required component of public education. This one passed out of the House and was amended in the Senate to take out the graduation requirement, but on the last day of the session, last Thursday, the House did not concur, so the bill died. So despite having a lot of support conceptually in both chambers this year, it did not pass this session, and we anticipate for it to return next year. Also, earlier in the session, we saw Senate Bill 5849 from Senator Wellman requiring that students demonstrate competency in computer science as a graduation requirement. This one did not get very far this session, but was a priority of hers. And as we've said in the past, bills often don't pass their first time around. So these two we will likely see again. And overall, again, graduation requirements along with competency or mastery-based learning will likely be a theme next legislative session. And then lastly, as I've already mentioned around student transportation, the student transportation funding formula called STARS is something we do expect to see coming back. So they've already started talking in WASDA, thinking ahead, what to do during the interim, and then what we may be expecting next year. So there's a lot of positive in there. And again, just a big thank you to our legislators in Olympia for representing us and working with us on these and other bills.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Thank you. We'll now move on to the consent agenda. Dr. Saltzman, have you received any questions about the consent agenda?
Thank you, Madam Chair. In the case of this consent agenda, the Superintendent's Office received and answered one question on the January financial report.
Thank you. Okay, first, does any director wish to remove an item from the consent agenda and place it in the new business section of the agenda? Okay. Now, is there any objection to adopting the consent agenda by general consent? Seeing none, the consent agenda is approved by general consent. We'll now move on to strategic progress monitoring. And I think, Dr. Scott, thank you.
Thank you. So good evening, President Mitchell, Board of Directors, and Dr. Saltzman. It's our privilege tonight to present the second annual Strategic Plan Priority Outcomes presentation, which will focus primarily on two objectives, and you can see them here. First, Dr. Matthews will review priority outcomes metrics that are aligned to our strategic plan, both through the perspective of overall performance in time as well as growth over time. And after each segment, regional superintendents and I will provide synopsis of key actions contributing to those metrics. In 2 weeks, we look forward to, on March 26th, a similar group will present fall to winter iReady diagnostic results to hear from several principals also about how they're translating that analysis to action. So I'm going to invite up Dr. Matthews. Take it away.
Thank you. As you know, the priority outcomes were established with the creation of the strategic plan as a way of monitoring our progress toward meeting all of the initiatives in the strategic plan. There are 6 priority outcomes: ensure third grade literacy, increase science achievement, increase math achievement, reduce the gaps in achievement among student groups, ensure students are prepared for college and career, and strengthen student wellness, engagement, and safety. For each of these metrics, I'll talk about performance and growth data. And it's important to remember that not all data comes out at the same time in public schools. And so you'll be seeing data since the last presentation of this information in 2022. All right, we'll start with ensure third grade literacy. So our performance metrics for third grade literacy are the percent of students who meet standard on the Smarter Balanced Assessment in English Language Arts, which incorporates both reading and math, and then the percent of students at or above grade level on the Winter iReady diagnostic in grade 3. So 63% of students met standard in the SBA in 22-23, and this winter, we're at 43% of students meeting standard on the iReady diagnostic in reading. So these are 2 different grade levels, as you can see, our third graders from last spring, and then our current third graders. It's important to keep in mind that we do this test in the fall and winter, and then have an additional optional testing in the spring. So at the midway point, halfway through the year, we already have 43% of our students at or above the grade level standards in reading. For growth, we look at 2 different metrics. One is the median student growth percentile, and then we also look at the percent of students who have met both their typical and stretch growth goals in iReady. So student growth percentiles, you'll remember, each student in our system in grades 3 through 8 are assigned a student growth percentile. And that's a measure of their growth relative to students across the state of Washington with a similar academic history. So our median for students in grade 4, the middle student in that group, has a student growth percentile of 59. So what that means is that half of the students in grade 4 have growth that is better than 60 to 99% of the students in their cohort across the state. So that's quite a good number. Anything over 50 we're looking for sure, and the larger the better. For iReady, typical growth, we have 45% of students who have already met their annual typical growth, so 100% of their typical growth goal for the year. And keeping in mind that, again, we have half the year left, so we'll see an increase in that. The median, by the way, the median percent of their growth goal that students have achieved is 88. So that means 50% of the kids in this class have already achieved more than 88% of the typical growth goal that is set for them. So somewhere between 88 and actually literally 300%. I looked at the data. For stretch growth, 21% of students halfway through the year have already met 100% of their stretch growth goal for the year. The median for that is 52% of their stretch growth goal, so they're well on their way. Also means that half of the students have met more than 52% of their stretch growth goal. The stretch growth goal is much more ambitious, but it will get students to standard much more quickly. So when we have a median of 52, that means half the students are above 52% of their stretch growth, well on their way to meeting it for this year, if not more than one time this year. The performance on the Washington Kindergarten Inventory of Developing Skills is used as a leading indicator. And as you know, it's highly correlated with third grade reading performance. So we look at three things associated with reading: literacy, language, and cognitive domain. 79.6% of our students met the literacy domain in the fall of this year, 73.2% met the language domain, and 79.7% met the cognitive domain. And looking at performance from last year, that's up 1.9% in literacy. Language is stable, and the cognitive domain is up 5.1%. And I also note that literacy, we are 2% above the state, and in cognitive, we're 4% above the state. We're at the same level in the language domain. So doing very well there. I'm going to hide these. I apologize, I did not see that there. Might be obscuring my data. All right, increased science achievement. For science achievement, we look at performance and growth on the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. It is given in grades 5, 8, and 11, so we look at those three grades as well as overall district composite score. 64.3% of fifth graders, 49.5% of eighth graders, 53.4% of 11th graders, and district-wide, 55.8% of students met standard last year on the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. Unlike ELA and math, we do not have student growth percentiles because that relies on a test given twice in consecutive years. So we rely on something called the average achievement level. We used this also last year in ELA and math because we didn't have 2 consecutive years to compare. This is a proxy that OSPI uses for growth, and it is the weighted average of the level that students fall into or meet when taking the Washington Comprehensive Assessment of Science. So 3.0 is meeting standard, and so we want that weighted average to approach and then exceed 3.0. We are at 2.7 for grade 5, 2.43 for 8th grade, and 2.53 for 11th grade. For increasing math achievement, we look at the Smarter Balanced Assessment in mathematics and also iReady, and then we will also talk a little bit about the enrollment of students in algebra and geometry in the 8th and 9th grade. So first, the percentage of students meeting standard in 5th, 8th, and 10th grade on the Smarter Balanced Assessment of mathematics. 56% met standard at 5th grade, 41.8% at 8th grade, 35% at 10th grade. Overall, in grades 3 through 8 and 10 was 51.7% of students meeting standard. When we select those grades, they sort of align with the science and give us a measure at each of the grade band levels. For iReady, 34% of students in grade 5 have already met standard on the diagnostic at grade 5. And then for our middle school and high school measures, we also monitor the percentage of students who have earned a full credit in algebra or geometry in grades 8 and 9. So 31.4% of 8th graders earned a full credit last year in algebra or geometry, and 76.6% of 9th graders. For growth, we look at the student growth percentile, and for math, in grade 5, the median student growth percentile is 58. So again, that means that if we look at the growth of our students compared to students across the state, 50% of our students had growth between 4th and 5th grade, greater than 58% of the students in the state in their academic cohort. So somewhere between 59 and 99%, half of our students. In grade 8, 55 was the median student growth percentile, and then for all grades, which would be 4th through 8th grade, our median was 56, so all above 50%. For growth in iReady, looking again at grade 5, 28% of the students in grade 5 have already met 100% of their typical growth at the midway point in the school year. 9% have already met all of their stretch growth for the year. And if we look at their median percent of growth, for typical growth in the 5th grade, the median is 56% of their growth goal. So that's more than half, which is kind of the dipstick for halfway through the year. So that means that half of the students in this class have already earned more than 56% of their typical growth. And the stretch growth median is 32%. So 50% of students have already achieved this much more ambitious growth goal of their stretch growth.
All right, we are very proud of the growth and proficiency that we're seeing with our priority outcomes, and we also know that we're pleased but not satisfied. You often hear us talk about that frame, and so I have the opportunity to share with you some of the examples of our continuous improvement efforts as it relates to those first 3 priority outcomes. And those 2 elements that I'll focus on include differentiated instruction and how that connects closely to collaboration as well as engagement. And the examples that I will provide are cross-cutting across those content areas. So first, with differentiated instruction, I really want to emphasize we have been emphasizing targeted, flexible small group instruction, which is a central part of our daily, weekly instructional experience, particularly in elementary school. And this is a part of the instructional day where individual or in small groups, specific strengths and needs are addressed. This includes our Tier 1 instruction. It's for every student. The engine behind targeted and effective small groups is knowing your students, knowing your standards, and then close collaboration. So it gets a lot to planning, so initial unit planning, as well as collecting formative assessment data along the way to see how that's going, to provide support for students. And this also involves a very close connection with our instructional paraeducators, who are a crucial part of our system, who are often supporting classroom teachers to provide more frequent and amounts of the small groups that are happening in the classroom setting. And so those practices need to include close coordination, supporting of the materials, how far did you get, and so that all goes back to the classroom teacher, and that's a cycle. So when you see differentiated instruction, think of data, formative collection of data, as well as very instructionally focused collaboration. The second area of focus that I'd like to illuminate as it relates to these priority outcomes is engagement. We want to make sure that students are engaged, and that starts with well-planned instruction, using our high-quality instructional materials, and getting students up and active. So you see on the third image from the left, the students who are standing and looking at the board, the visual, and this is a practice that we have been expanding a lot, and it's called Building Thinking Classrooms. And it's all about highly planned instruction and turning over the cognitive load, who's carrying the load within the lesson, to students. And it needs to be highly planned because it's pretty distributed, and then the teacher comes in and supports differently as the groups engage in the learning tasks. So you can see students here working as a team, standing, thinking, talking, recording their thinking, and then the supports come in and out, but really expecting our students to learn with each other with rigorous instruction. So engagement is a critical part of how we look at our priority outcomes to make sure students are working together, they're talking. Those are also just support all of our students really well, particularly students who are learning language, and keep them interested, keep them standing and moving and engaged in the content. We know that helps them meet their full potential. So those are two of the areas that we know are critical to the first three priority outcomes that we've reviewed, and we want to share those with you. So with that, I'll return it back to Dr. Matthews.
All right, our next priority outcome is to reduce gaps in achievement among our student groups. And for this, we're going to look at the Smarter Balanced Index score, the mean index score. And just as a reminder, right here, I am looking at the all students for 2023, which is 3.29. So the index score is an integer and a decimal. The integer indicates the level that students scored in. So a 3 and a 4 are meeting standard, and that's where we want to be, above 3. The decimal shows you what percentage of the range of that score students are in. So for example, all students at 3.29 means that on average they're meeting standard, and they're about a quarter of the way into the range for that level 3. This is an important metric because when we close gaps, we want to close gaps and have everyone meet standard, right? So on this right side, you see 2022 and 2023, the mean SBA index score for English language arts. And the numbers that are highlighted in green, those are all groups of students whose SBA mean index score increased from 22 to 23. In addition, on the left side, what you are seeing is the gap closing. So in the blue arrow, you are seeing all as our sort of 0 point, right? And then each of the subgroups performance relative to the all. The numbers that are in green, those are groups whose index score increased enough to close the gap between their group and the all. So for American, Indian, Alaska Native, African American or Black, Native Hawaiian or Pacific Islander, multilingual learners, students qualified for free and reduced lunch, and students with disabilities, all of those groups had a decrease in their gap in the index mean score. This is the same information in math, and you can see on the right here, with the exception of 4 groups, all of the other groups had an increase from 22 to 23. And I do want to point out that some of these groups are very, very close, 2.80, 2.97. They are on the cusp. If you look, it doesn't matter what grade level you're talking about, if you're at a 2.85, you are about 7 to 11 points away from meeting standard. So that's how close that is. And that's why we want to watch it down to the 100th place in this particular metric. So many subgroups increasing their math index score. In addition, we saw gap closing with our African American or Black students, multilingual learners, students eligible for free and reduced lunch, and our students with disabilities. And I also want to point out in this case, the all also increased from 3.01 to 3.03. So to be closing a gap when the all is increasing means that those subgroups are increasing at an accelerated rate. All right, so this on the left is our ELA, mean index score, and on the right, our math. The groups that are in green are all groups that hit, on average, that 3.0 or higher. And so in addition to closing the gap between the all and each of the groups, we want to be really monitoring the groups that are approaching and then exceeding that 3.0. And we have quite a few groups that are getting very close. In ELA, our Hispanic or Latino group at 2.85, students eligible for free and reduced lunch at 2.87. Again, for a student, that can be between 7 and 11 points, very, very close. And likewise, you see that with math for our African American or Black students, two or more races at 2.97, very close.
So we're very excited about the results we are seeing in closing gaps. We still have work to do. As you saw in many of these areas, we're closing gaps, and yet those students are not yet at the place where the mean student score is achieving that standard. We're not there yet. We still have work to do, but we are very excited that we are closing gaps and that we're doing that while continuing to raise the bar for all students. So our schools are really focused on closing those gaps across all student demographics. I'm going to focus on three areas that have been a specific focus for us this year, and it's been very intentional work. So I'm going to talk about closing gaps for students who are multilingual learners, for students who qualify for special services or students with disabilities, and for students experiencing poverty or those students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. So for multilingual students across our system, we are developing the capacity for staff to meet the needs of these students by creating instructional structures such as pre-teaching, using resources such as Imagine Literacy and Learning, Imagine Language and Literacy, and then leaders are engaging staff in professional learning so that they strengthen their instructional planning so that they can increase supports for the language learners. For example, including the use of language objectives. They have content objectives, and then what language are they going to use to demonstrate their understanding of that content? They use vocabulary development and the use of language assessments to inform individual supports. So the circular picture on the left on the current slide shows several of our school leaders that were engaged in professional learning around developing language objectives. So they in turn could go back and lead their staff in learning how to develop those language objectives, and then they could look for them in the class, and they can work together as teams to really build those skills of the staff to meet the needs of the multilingual students. And if you go back to those previous slides, you're going to see both in English language arts and in math, you're seeing a gap close between all students and multilingual students. For students with disabilities, developing clarity and capacity for increased use of inclusionary practices has been a significant emphasis. So this includes co-teaching at the secondary schools, where a teacher with expertise in a particular content area partners with a teacher with expertise in individualizing instruction, especially but not limited to students with disabilities. They partner together to teach a class that includes students with disabilities and students that don't have identified disabilities in an inclusive setting. The circular picture in the middle shows such a classroom at Jackson High School in math. These teachers are true partners in planning, teaching, and assessing student progress. They had such success last year in algebra that these same teachers decided to partner again this year, and they're teaching the same students in geometry. They developed a great synergy, and it is a true partnership. At the elementary level, we've also been moving toward more inclusionary practices with push-in supports by both paraeducators and special education teachers, so that students with disabilities are included more often in the general education setting, where they not only have access to grade level curriculum and instruction at grade level standards, but they also are in class with their grade level peers. For students experiencing poverty, and a proxy for that is students who qualify for free or reduced lunch. In addition to the supports during the school day mentioned earlier around Tier 1 instruction, like flexible small groups, paraeducator supports, there is often a need for additional instructional time. We have extended day programs for students at all the Title I schools, as well as other schools receiving learning assistance program or LAP funds for students experiencing poverty. The circular picture on the right shows a group of students in extended day learning at Hawthorne Elementary School. Do you see they're using those vertical surfaces and working in groups? So they're using those, what the teachers have learned about really strong engaging instruction during the school day, and they're translating that to the extended day programs as well. These students are actively learning using the magnetic reading program, as well as those best practices around student engagement. We have 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students across all 7 schools that receive Title I LAP funding that are engaged in this extended learning program. And we're seeing success with more students in this group, and they were selected because they were behind. They were selected because they needed extended time, and they were often selected because they were not showing the growth that we expect them to see. And more of the students in these extended learning programs are showing more progress towards those ambitious stretch goals in reading than students across our system. So we're really excited about the progress that we're seeing with these students. Every one of our schools uses the data from student assessments, both the large-scale ones like the SBA and iReady, those assessments, and also classroom-based assessments. They use them to identify gaps, and then they use what they know about students' strengths, their assets, and their needs to design additional strategies to close the gaps. At the board studies session recently, you heard about the multi-tier systems of support, MTSS. We talked about, remember this, like skiing, what supports do you need, right? So some of these strategies, like the use of language objectives or small flexible groups, those are Tier 1 strategies. Everyone has access to them, everyone can benefit from them. Others, like pre-teach or extended day, are Tier 2 supports. Tier 1 instruction happens for all students, and access to grade level standards and excellent teaching are part of Tier 1 instruction for all students. And some students need that and more. And our schools are committed to building the capacity and strengthening supports to close the gaps for our students.
All right, our next metric is ensuring students are prepared to succeed in college and career. And this particular data set is quite diverse because we're talking about a lot of different things. Some students go right to work, others go to four-year, two-year university or career and technical school, some go in the military. So we'll start with our four-year graduation rate, which for the class of 2023 was 94.8. We look at college going rates as well, and we look at two different organizations. We look at the Educational Research and Data Center, which is ERDC. They will provide us with data about in-school, two-year, four-year, and career and technical colleges. The reason that we use two is because the National Clearinghouse will give us data about the entire country, but they do not give us information about career and technical universities, and we feel that those are very important. They release data on their own schedule. So this year you are seeing ERDC's data for the class of 2021, which their college going rate for Everett Public Schools was 59%. National Clearinghouse should be releasing later this spring, and we'll give you an update on that. In my last presentation a year ago, we had the opposite. We had data from National Clearinghouse, but not ERDC. All right, the next metric is performance on the WIDA multilingual learner assessment. So this is the annual assessment of our multilingual learners' speaking, reading, writing, and listening skills. And we look at two things, percent proficient and learner progress. I want to talk just briefly about this assessment because these two metrics are so important. And I'm going to argue that one is perhaps more important than the other. So when students take the Smarter Balanced Assessment each year, it's based on the grade level standards that they are taught that year. So our goal would be 100% proficient at the grade level standards, right? And then next year, another 100%. Like we want every child to meet standard every year. When we look at percent proficient on the WIDA, we cannot think of it that way because the WIDA is assessing where students are in that reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And every year, our students are not all going to get to proficiency because they come to us with different levels of skill. We have some students who enter our schools and have never had any instruction in English whatsoever. And we have others that have had extensive, even though they speak a different language maybe in their home, they are nearly fluent. So the percent proficient each year are the students that meet the full standard, which means they exit services. They have met the language standard and no longer need those services. Last year, we were at 12.5%. And to put that in perspective, the state of Washington was at 5.5. But again, this can vary widely because we don't know next year what level of performance students will enter our schools in. What is probably more important is the multilingual learner progress. And you have heard me talk about this, about the Washington School Improvement Framework. It's a metric on that as well. And this measures students' performance, students' progression in their performance from one year to the next, such that they exit service within 6 years, depending on where they start. So if a student starts at the lowest emerging level when they enter our schools, they have 6 years. If they start at progressing 3, they have 3 years. So 47.8% of our students made progress in the 22-23 school year. That's an 11% gain over the year before. It's also 11% higher than the state. And a year ago, we were only 6% higher than the state. So our performance is actually not just higher than the state, but increasing at a higher rate than the state. Also, to put this in perspective, you have heard me talk in the Washington School Improvement Framework about the deciles and the top decile, the top 10% of schools in the state. In order to be in the top 10% of schools in the state, you have to be at 48%. Or higher. So that should give you some perspective of how we're doing relative to the state. We want 100% of our students to be progressing as well, but this really is a solid number for us. We actually have 14 of our elementaries in the 8th, 9th, or 10th decile this year in EL progress, which is exemplary. Our next metric is meeting at least one of the college and career readiness standards. So at the top, you see the SAT benchmark for the class of 2023, 340 students, or 27.2 students met standard on both the evidence-based reading and writing and the math college readiness benchmarks set by the College Board. 99.2% of our students earned a dual college credit or dual credit while in high school from that class. 56 students, or 4.5 students, earned a qualifying score on the ASVAB, and I'm going to put an asterisk next to that because the military doesn't give us that data. We rely on students to report it, and students generally report it when they need that score as a high school pathway option. So I suspect many, many more met that qualifying standard. Likewise, for the military, 18 students or 1.4 students notified us that they enlisted in the military. Again, they have to notify us. We don't get that from the government, so that certainly could be higher. 882 students, or 66.7%, engaged in work-based learning. 456, or 34.5% of our students, earned career-ready certificates. And 73.3%, or 917 students, met every one of the college academic distribution requirements for the state of Washington. So overall for this class, 99.8% met one or more of those college or career readiness standards.
Well, first off, thank you for hanging with us in this presentation. I know it's very data heavy, data focused, but it's really important because we're communicating in this particular section these indicators that we're monitoring and measuring for college and career readiness. How do we know we're getting better? And to think of it, it's like a car. If you have really bad tires, your alignment's gonna go out. That's a busted system. If you have really bad alignment, you're gonna have brake issues, and you gotta fix that to keep the car going forward and stopping in time. And then if you are compensating for both of those things, you're probably gonna have to buy more expensive gas to fix the problem, right? Because you need better fuel efficiency if you're still using a gasoline car, all right? Now, we could all switch to electric, that'd probably solve the problem, but maybe not, okay? So the reason why I share all this is because the three things that are listed here on the screen are about success in college and career is a result of academic opportunities our district is providing all of its students. But when you have busted systems that don't help create the access, we don't make progress. The three things that you see up there are actually things we've been working on through the strategic plan that have addressed and repaired, and in many ways, substantially improved the systems that create college and career readiness in Everett. So our recent strategic work has been to strengthen and unify our secondary learning model into a coherent experience in grades 6 through 12 with the implementation of our redesigned middle school model. This year is the first year of that. We will be seeing results from that in the coming years in such these board reports. Today and into our immediate future, our secondary students will finish middle school with 2 or more high school credits. That's the average today at the start of this year. It will only get higher for every student as we continue to implement that new system. And then finishing with some students up to 6 credits coming out of 8th grade, which is essentially they've completed their freshman year. So huge system that's improved because of our college and career readiness focus and our strategic plan. Due to this shift, our students entering 9th grade will be better prepared to meet the learning expectations of high school and pass all of their classes their 9th grade year. We focused substantially this year and last year on 9th grade on track because we know that most students who drop credits are dropping credits their freshman year and the first semester of their sophomore year. It puts them behind. I'm really proud to say all 3 of our comprehensive high schools did substantial work with the help of some state grants for 2 of them. And we have the highest 9th grade on track performance this semester than we've had in almost the last recent 10 years, which is fantastic. So with both Everett High School and Cascade High School utilizing those state grants, we see that their 9th grade on track efforts are working and decreasing the F rates, which means a lot less need for remedial and credit recovery classes in the summer. Again, one piece of the car, if it's not working quite right, creates many other problems in the system. And finally up here is with more students on track for 9th grade and having greater ability to then not have only passed all their 9th grade classes, but actually flourishing in them, not just passing them, but doing well in them. That's what really creates the access for all students to dual credit in our college and the high school and advanced placement and advanced pathway programs. When you're super behind after your 9th grade year, you can't really get into those programs because you have to make up so many credits during the day, right, of what you didn't pass. So when we think of this as a system, what that ends up creating for us is shifting more students into the green for on-time graduation over time. So collectively, these 3 system-level changes will have a significant impact on student opportunity, access, and achievement in our on-time graduation rate and college readiness indicators over the coming years. And that is exciting.
All right, our last priority outcome is strengthen student wellness, engagement, and safety. For this metric, we will start with the students' school stakeholder annual survey for grades 3 through 12. And we look at 4 of the domain areas: emotional regulation, engagement, school safety, and student relationships. So for emotional regulation, the percent favorable in the spring of 2023 was 51%. And when we look at elementary versus secondary, we see that the percent favorable was very similar. Secondary did have one outlier score, and the question was, how well can you pull yourself out of a bad mood? And it had a 39% favorable. So that did pull their overall score down slightly. For engagement, we had 38% favorable. There was a substantial difference between elementary at 59% and secondary at 25% favorable. Elementary, in this case, did have an outlier, and that was the question, how often do you talk about school out of class? So maybe not a surprise that that's an outlier. For school safety, 58% favorable, and for secondary and elementary, they were more similar than engagement, with elementary at 66 and secondary at 53. Both of these higher than the 2019 pre-pandemic levels for school safety. Both of these grade bands had the same outlier, and that was how often are people disrespectful to you in your school. And as I analyzed that data, it was very interesting. For elementary, the overall score would have gone up 13% without that outlier, and 36% at the high school. So definitely worth looking at that. Primarily, I think, because it is a distinctly personal metric, how you define disrespect and experience that. Student relationships domain was at 61% favorable. That was up 2 for elementary and 5% for high school. High school up 14% in 2 years, though, so a big jump in that area. The one outlier at high school for this metric was how connected do you feel to adults, which was 32%. Ironically, the highest score was 82%, which is extremely high for a survey, and that was, do you have an adult you can go to? So there's a little bit of a disconnect in how students maybe are experiencing those two questions. Emotional regulation was up 2.4%, overall engagement, and school safety down 1%, which we figure plus or minus 1% is sort of flat. Student relationships up 4%. The next metric is regular attendance. This is an extremely high standard. So the percent of students who have one or fewer absences in 30 calendar days, so weekends and holidays are factored into those 30 calendar days of enrollment, and it's non-contiguous, so students can come in and out of a school, and it all adds up. So our rate was 70.3%, it's 5% up from the 5.4% up from the prior year. To put this in a little bit of perspective, I mentioned that the WASF, the top 10% of schools, were above 48%. That was the cutoff. For this, it's 99%. To be in the top 10% of schools, you have to hit 99%. So it's a very high standard. And then finally, the percent of exclusionary discipline. So this is the percent of students, unduplicated, who have a short-term suspension, long-term suspension, expulsion, or emergency expulsion. Rate is 3.7%, plus 0.4%. Again, plus or minus 1% is really considered stable. And this metric very much in line with past years.
So thank you. This is sort of the bookend piece here as we close. Wanted just to point out a few things here related to the areas of engagement, wellness, and safety. We know that this begins and ends with high-quality Tier 1 instruction in each and every classroom across our system. We know that engaging instruction, and you've heard those through lines throughout this presentation, engaging instruction, warm and welcoming environment, high expectations for learning. We know these things will improve students' experience and lead them to more positive outcomes in these areas. And of course, as we learned at the study session on MTSS a bit ago, Tier 2 and Tier 3 strategies follow in the areas for students who need that level of intensive supports. This work also involves capacity building for strengthening progress monitoring. So for staff involved in ensuring that kids get what they need in these areas of engagement, wellness, and safety, and collaborating around colleagues at every level. So the grade level, the professional learning community, the instructional leadership team. So those well-oiled machines of collaboration that happen on Learning Improvement Fridays, on staff meetings, kid by kid, skill by skill, is really, really important in these areas that we continue to progress monitor. And again, that's what the MTSS and PBIS processes are all about, is tailoring those supports for students who need to have their attendance and some of these metrics kick-started, stimulated, and wrapped around with services. And that's a community effort, right? That involves families in that process, incentivizing attendance, positive reinforcement of behaviors, and highlighting pro-social norms in school, whether that's in the school assembly, classroom level, through counseling staff, through social workers. It's absolutely a team effort to improve the overall experience in schools as it relates to these indicators. And finally, that engine that drives all of this is that continuous improvement process that involves that collaboration with families and staff to re-engage, support, assess the efficacy of these strategies, and then modify the strategies along the way. So this isn't a one-hit wonder, a one-stop shop. This is engaging in that continuous improvement cycle along the way. So we thank you for your time, and I'm going to sort of quarterback the questions here among the team with respect to the various areas here. So thank you.
Thank you so much. I think we've asked for data, and my goodness, thank you so much. Are there any questions? Who would like to start us off? Okay.
Thank you. This was a lot to digest. I kind of see this as a study session for me anyway. I'm very new here, but I have some kind of clarifying questions if you would indulge me. On page 25, which is multi-ML learners, I think you said that the percent making progress went up 10% over last year. Like it was kind of a remarkable growth. And I wonder, how did we, I'm curious, what did we do that was so successful? And what are the plans, going forward? Because it is kind of, it feels to me like we're also kind of saying 52.2 aren't making progress, which hurts. So I'm just kind of curious.
Right. So I will defer to the teaching and learning team for program, but I will say that in 2022, we have a new test, the WIDA, and it is very, very rigorous, especially in comparison to the ELPA 21 assessment. And so we've had to make lots of changes, as you do whenever standards become more rigorous. You have to make adjustments. And I think that 22 to 23 shows some awareness of the greater level of rigor on the assessment. And that's just from the assessment standpoint.
Thank
Well, I
you.
think there's more to your answer.
Yes, thank you for the question. So I think Dr. Matthews did a good job of answering kind of was that really that remarkable growth? And, what does that mean regarding, the move from ELPA 21 to the WIDA? And I can talk a little bit about what the schools are doing to achieve this remarkable growth and then to continue it. So one of the things that the schools has done has really been to dig into the WIDA standards, the standards by which the students are measured on this exam. So as was said earlier, they understand the assessment better, and they have been able to dig into not just what's this student's overall level on the WIDA, but what are they in each of the domains? So what are they in speaking, reading, listening, and writing? And for example, I was digging in with a group of staff members, and they were looking at a particular student who had really strong writing and reading skills and listening skills. But what was pulling the overall score down was their speaking skills. And so what that general education teacher, I think it was a third or fourth grader, decided they needed to do was, this student needs more practice speaking. They have some of these other things down, but they need to orally produce the language. And so therefore, I need to provide the scaffolds, but ensure that I'm just not letting them point or answer in a quick one-word sentence, but I need to expect more from this student in producing oral English, and then I can provide some scaffolds, like I can provide some sentence frames, or I can do some things. So our school teams have really dug into overall, how are we doing, and also how are those individual students doing, and what do we need to support them in advancing their learners so that they do make that progress towards meeting those WIDA standards overall. So some of the things like identifying language objectives, what are they going to do? What language do the students need to do? They need to be able to describe, but they also need to be able to explain, and they need to be able to argue. And so some of those group work that they're doing at those whiteboards, those vertical surfaces, so learning those kinds of things, and then making sure that in each lesson they have opportunities to do reading, writing, listening, and speaking in English. They've developed what they can do. If they're scoring at this level, what can they do, and what are next steps? And so they are pushing them to those next steps. It's pretty exciting work.
Thank you.
So thanks for the question.
Yeah.
Can I ask another one?
Yes.
On page 26, it talks about pathways. And just out of curiosity, if you could help me understand, I think, so on very early in the presentation, we say 94.8% graduation rate, and then we have 99.8% pathways. I don't understand. Can you help me understand
Yeah,
that?
absolutely. So the 94.8% four-year graduation rate means that the students have met all of their graduation requirements. So they've earned their credits, they have a graduation pathway, and they have their high school and beyond plan. This 99.8% reflects that every student has at least one college and career readiness standard. So many may have more, and I suspect we have a few who have all of them, or most of them. But it does mean that for our graduates, 99.8% of them have met one of these college and career readiness standards.
Got it. Thank you. Okay, last one for me, sorry. On page 32, it's exclusionary discipline.
Right.
And just clarification, when we say 3.7%, can a student count in more than once? Or is it like
Not
a
in
unique
this
student?
metric.
Okay.
The state's metric is unduplicated students. So this represents 780 students out of 21,260 that were enrolled in that year. And so those students had some exclusionary discipline, perhaps one day short-term suspension, something like
Got it.
that.
Thank you.
So just to stay on that same slide, so I'm going to just mess up how we do this. Is growth inherently bad in this area?
We want to have a negative growth, however,
Is positive growth bad?
Yes.
So this positive
But-
of 0.04, that's what I was curious, it's like, we're looking for.
The answer to positive growth is bad, but the answer to this is 0.4 is a very small percentage of 21,260 kids.
Okay, because I think you said something about plus or minus.
28.
Was it plus or minus 1 or plus or minus 0.1?
Yeah, plus or minus 1 and
Okay.
1% in any of our metrics, we consider stable, maintaining.
Okay, thank you, okay. That was all I had, so anyone else? Carol?
I had a couple comments. First of all, I think maybe, to your point, this should be a study session. I had questions like third slide in and pretty much every other slide after that. And I'm thinking maybe how my colleagues to my right and left are feeling right now. And I thank you because I didn't understand the career readiness slide either. But to me, context, broader context, I think would be really helpful in understanding some of these numbers. So for example, if someone said, hey, how's third grade literacy doing? I see it's one of your, focuses in the district. I could answer like 28% have made double, their extra growth. And to me, there's just, I need it simplified a little bit. I mean, I appreciate actually the detail to get to that simplified answer, but when I look at things like reducing the gaps, so I would love to know what 2019 looks like versus today, and I see the improvement from last year, which is great news and really good work, but when we talk about the pandemic, there was a lot of gap widening. And so I would expect to see, gap improvement. And my question is, have we gotten better at that since pre-pandemic, I guess? And same thing with like third grade literacy, we're seeing these great improvements and I love that data, but it doesn't help me understand over longevity if we're really improving on some of these benchmarks. So, and some of them you spoke to along the way, which was really helpful, like against the state, although we're always way better than the state. So to me, that's not really relevant. So, but, in terms of like, are we, how are we doing internally on some of this versus just 1 year measurement?
Yeah. So if I could just say, important to keep in mind that the priority outcomes, they came out of the strategic plan. And the intention is to monitor the implementation of the actions around the strategic plan. That's why it is really looking at starting with 2022 as that baseline year. But certainly, it is definitely your strategic plan, so.
Yeah, no, it's all good, and I appreciate the information. It was a bit overwhelming, the amount for one sitting and sifting through it, because just a lot of questions come up along the way, but.
I really appreciate context, because it was seeing 94.5, but compared to what? So it's a really good number. I think we've been higher, but how much higher, or is this a little bit lower? So it's just sort of a great context. So, Dr. Atkins, anything?
Yeah, on this figure of exclusionary discipline, does that figure include in-school suspensions?
No, this is out-of-school suspension.
Anything? Okay, I think we're good. Thank you all. And now we'll move on to section 13.0, information and discussion. First, starting off with a special services spotlight with Ms. Clevenger. Or Peter, are you going to start us out?
I am. Yep, I'm going to toggle here and let's see. Okay, so thank you, and good evening again, President Mitchell and Board and Dr. Saltzman. It is a real treat to be here tonight to have Kelly Clevenger shine a light on high-level strategies, investments, opportunities that our district is providing students with disabilities. And I just want to emphasize that students with disabilities in our district bring strengths, gifts, talents each and every day. They contribute in amazing ways across all 27 of our schools. And they're also supported, and as many of you have seen, in such inspirational ways by such a dedicated staff of teachers and paraeducators who serve them each and every day, primarily through their individual education plans or IEPs. So you're going to hear a lot about that. So leading the spotlight tonight is our Executive Director of Special Services, Kelly Clevenger, who's going to take us through the presentation. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm so excited and delighted to be here tonight to talk to you about give a high-level spotlight about how Everett Public Schools provides for students with disabilities served through individual education plans. Besides the facts and figures for today, I'm hoping that you're going to be able to leave here with a sense of why we do this work. And when I think about you going to sleep at night or thinking about how your day was today, that you might remember a few of the stories that I'm going to actually sprinkle through this report that also includes our theory of action, some demographic summaries, talking about our programs, our advancements, and then our work for opportunities. And I also just would like to point out to you that this work doesn't happen by ourselves, without a lot of cross-collaboration between departments in the CRC, but also, most importantly, the heavy work that our schools staff do to support all the students in their school, including students with disabilities. So I want to talk to you a little bit about a few couple stories here, maybe 3 stories that I want to talk to you about, and through the lens of our assistive technology team. Through our team, we're able to uncover hidden gifts and talents for our students with disabilities. So for example, the student with autism who had a full reciprocal conversation with an AI app, or a student who for the first time believed that they were smart because they learned how to use speech to text, and they were able to express themselves and not worry about their spelling mistakes. Or the student who is losing her sight due to a brain tumor, who is now learning how to read and write with Braille. Our work crisscrosses every priority student outcome, birth to 21, working towards every child having access to standards-based grade-level instruction. If we do that, we will have increased literacy, science, and math achievement so that we will reduce the gaps and ensure students are prepared for college and career with strong mental, physical, and emotional wellness by acknowledging their neurodiversity and by providing just the right instruction and accommodations for them to thrive. This is who we are. This is how we're structured in our department. So none of this work happens without a dedicated team of professionals, like Dr. Scott said, supporting all of the stakeholders. We have 200 certified staff, 300 classified staff to serve 2,750 students. To get the work done, we are structured to provide the best service for our students, families, and staff. I do also want to point out that we have 3 special education directors. Each one of them supports 900 students with disabilities and their families, and all their classified and related service staff. All this work is done to carry out our theory of action. You've seen this before. It is still our guiding light. Presuming competence, increasing inclusionary practices, acknowledging students with IEPs are general education students first, and providing them opportunities to shine. I'm going to tell you a little story now about a second grader who I fell in love with a couple of years ago when he was a kindergarten student, and I was asked for a couple of days to go out and support him. I was thrilled to support him. I was thrilled to be in the classroom. I met him in kindergarten, and later on, he has an IEP, and later on, he was tested into the highly capable program, joining his highly capable class to work on math. He has a 5th grade math level and a second grader. He was also in our Achieve program, which is the Achieve program is the program that helps students deal with self-regulation. So we did not let the program dictate his potential. He is now a member of 2 classrooms at his school. He's a member of the highly capable class, plus he's still learning his skills of self-regulation. He's a really amazing child. So you've seen this before, some of you have. I think you saw it at a couple of board meetings ago at a study session. This is our visual that really explains our continuum of services. We, here in Everett, from least restrictive, where they spend most of their time in general education, in fact, some of students spend all of their time in general education, all the way to where we might have a modified class with all the peers in there have disabilities and are receiving services in a separate classroom. We want all students to spend as much time as possible in their general education class. And in the last 3 years at the Everett School District, we have been able to increase the number of students in the general education, receiving services in their general education classroom by double digits since 2021. Close to 57% of our students are in LRE1, which means they spend 80 to 100% of the time in their general education classroom. This gives them access to grade level standard-based instruction with their peers. Our team has accomplished this by increasing co-teaching, developing inclusive ECAP programs with early learning, and continuing to offer a continuum of services in elementary resource programming, serving more children in the general education classroom. We also are offering co-teaching, like Dr. Woods told us earlier too. And if you can look at the graph to the right, it just shows the percentage of our students, how they're served, and most students are served in the resource room, meaning that every school has a resource room and staff to support students. They primarily spend 80 to 100% of their time in general education. So given that we are a large-ish school district, we have structured our programs in 4 various ways. The first is a more intensive service model for the students who need the most support. So they have a lower teacher to student ratio. So that's the first intensive model up there. Classes like our life skills program or developmental preschool. The second is a more moderate service model, which are extended resource, and many of our transition programs have 15 students, 2 paraeducators, and 1 teacher. We also have a varied service model, which primarily is our resource room services. In elementary school, it's between 22 and 24 students are served with 1 teacher. In our secondary schools, it's 30 students that are served by a secondary teacher. And then we have an itinerant service model where it's usually children that need just 1 service, like SLP or OTPT. They could be private school kids coming into the school district to just get 1 service, get an SLP. We also have itinerant preschool teachers who go into some community preschools and serve students with disabilities that don't need a full day of developmental preschool. I'm really excited to talk about these next slides, the advancements that we've made, because we've worked really hard, the whole district has, and I'm really excited to present that to you today. So we, as a district, we've made a lot of progress. We're proud of the students with IEPs have opportunities to shine at greater rates than ever before. Uncovering the barriers in the last 3 years, district-wide, through collaborative effort, we've developed a more robust way to serve our preschoolers through in a collaboration with early learning, working. This year we have 4 inclusive ECAP classes, and next year we will have 6. We've also, you've seen the slide of the career and technical education. I drilled it down a little bit so that it's just looking at students with disabilities. There is a 383% increase in the students that with disabilities that are enrolled in the dual credit classes for CTE. So that in 2021, there were 31 students. This year, this year there's 150. So we made a lot of progress. And a lot of that happened through collaboration and communication with CTE, and they really saw the need to increase their enrollment for our students with disabilities. We also, our co-teaching initiative is very much live. It's become very operational and not aspirational in Everett. It's very much part of the course catalogs now. It's expected that students in the secondary schools will, mostly in the secondary right now, will be able to take the classes that they need and get their needs met through various ways, including co-teaching. And we have it now in all of our secondary schools. So moving on, we're kind of straddling between right now and what's coming up, but we also developed a pilot for inclusionary practices in the elementary school so that student need drives where services are delivered. By setting an intention to increase push and support at schools, including multi-language learners, staff, and special services staff, we are offering a push-in model where the support staff would work in their general education classroom. So instead of pulling students out into the resource room, we're pushing staff in. Through deliberate class placement, master scheduling, and professional development, schools have had a tremendous increase in student meeting their typical growth, and a couple have even reached their stretch growth goals in iReady. As it is just halfway through the school year, the graph at the right is an example from Silver Lake Elementary School. As you can see across the board, students with IEPs in grades 3, 4, and 5 were able to show significant growth in math. And so just to give you a little frame, so the students in third grade in math, there were 4 students served through the resource room, and all 4 of them made tremendous growth in their iReady scores, and grades 4 and 5 are also very high too. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about our community connections, and this is primarily having to do with our students who are in our transition program. Students with IEPs whose teams decide they need services until they're 21 are served through our transition program. About 2.3% of our students each year are in our programs, learning by doing. All strength-based programming. So for example, we have Project Search, which we haven't talked about very much. It's a collaborative effort with Work Opportunities, Everett Public Schools, and Providence Swedish, where every year students in their final year of transition can participate in the program. They're located at Providence Hospital and serve 3 internships during the year. So you can see from the pictures there that some of them are doing data entry, some of them are delivering mail or flowers, or someone is also working in supply chain stocking. I want to point out another program that we have is at our Carl Gibson Center, which is a Volunteers of America program. And the young man on the right-hand side there, he came back after graduating from our Everett Public Schools to the VOA, and he gave an impassioned speech during a fundraiser at the Carl Gibson Center. You should have seen the dad's face. He was so proud of his son, and we were all gleaming too. And Director Herman was there too. So I think what happened after his speech, I really do think that donations went up after that speech. It was quite touching, actually. We also spend a lot of time engaging our stakeholders. At the beginning, I referenced the district-wide collaboration. These are all folks that support us and help us and to make changes. I also want to just also say that we have a very strong special education PTSA and a very strong special education advisory council, and the Everett Public Schools and these two entities are actually putting together a family engagement event on April 27th here at the CRC that will be a resource fair for parents. We'll have some sessions on IEP 101, having families learn more about the IEP process, and we're going to have childcare and activities for the students. So it's a true collaborative effort between those three entities. Looking to the future, so we are pleased but not satisfied. We have things that we want to keep working on. One of them is looking at our inclusionary practices and really strengthening our elementary inclusionary practices. We've developed a model at Silver Lake, and we're going to be replicating that next year in a few other schools. We're really taking a deep look in how to increase independence and self-advocacy for our most impacted students. Those who receive one-on-one support, we're digging deep into that and trying to figure out a way to help them have more independence. Second, we're working on some more cross-district collaboration with universal Tier 1 instruction, really supporting that and helping teachers are able to do that. And then strengthening our MTSS processes, meaning that we're developing a pre-referral process and merging MTSS with special services so that we have strong data to support that a student might need an IEP or maybe not. Maybe the interventions that we're doing with the MTSS are working very well. And then we also are devoting time and energy into the state level to fully fund high-cost IEPs and advocacy for growing need for intensive instructional placement for our students with behavior, and trying to help the state develop maybe some new out-of-district placements so that we can serve our students better. So, thank you very much. Are there any questions?
Yeah, thank you. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Thank you. Tonight, there's a lot of celebrations tonight. This has been a good meeting. What struck me is also in the previous presentation, the small group targeted instruction, push and support. A lot of these things really require the teachers to have a good handle on the classroom and routines. And that was something that struck me during our IR visits in the fall, that the classrooms, even with very young kids, could do those sorts of things, and it doesn't throw everything off. If anything, the students are very much still engaged in these other sort of, it doesn't look the same as the teacher all teaching one classroom. That model is sort of out the door. So it is really nice to hear of the inclusion, the push-in, keeping kids in the classroom, and I imagine it goes without saying there's got to be a lot of PD around this for teachers that just maybe are not used to it to really support that model. But I think it's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I will give you an example of Silver Lake. Silver Lake intentionally built a lot of professional development about universal design for learning across the entire school. And they have high multi-language learner population as well. So they have a lot of support. And so Teresa Campbell has really worked hard to develop PD, really good master scheduling, and it's actually it's a beautiful site. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sorry. I think because my brain is tired and we've been sitting here for 2 hours, so how about if we come back at 6:40 and take just a quick stretch our legs, use facilities if we need to? I just need to stand up, so thank you.
What time are we going to get out of here, guys?
All right. Now moving on.
I'm telling my husband I'll be home about 7:30.
Sorry. Apologize. To section 13.02, enrollment outlook 24 to 33, Mr. Gunn. Did I type that right?
I think so. Okay, good evening, Board President Mitchell, Dr. Saltzman, and board members. I am providing an update, an outlook for you for the enrollment from 2024 to 2033. And this is a companion piece to a presentation I made to you in October that was an update on the October 1 enrollment. So that presentation, I shared with you how our enrollment came in compared to the projections and a little bit about some of our neighbors. Now I'm going to give you more context to that and share with you more information about our neighbors. And also, we're going to be looking into the future, 1 year, 6 year, and a 10-year outlook. And I'll try not to take too much time to this because I know that we've had a lot of data tonight. So I will also remind you how we produce the enrollment projections and then how we use them. And that we use them for budgeting and staffing and also facilities planning in a variety of ways, bond and levy planning, where we place portable classrooms, how much space we'll have available at various locations. And in a long-range outlook, where we try to acquire properties and where we would build schools. And then also allocation of technology, how much we'll need and where we'll need to place that technology. And ultimately, where we will plan to locate programs and ultimately then whether we will have certain schools open to transfers or not. So this is a chart you've seen many times. I'll just kind of summarize it. It shows from 1951, I believe it is, to 2023 that we're increasing, we have increased by 11,517 over 72 years. That represents about 1% year growth over time. So you think of stock market graphs when they show this kind of thing, and they say it's a good investment because it always ultimately will increase. That's what our enrollment's been doing for 72 years. I'm sorry, it's actually a 2% growth per year during that time. What I'm going to share with you here in a few minutes is that the projected future growth for the next 10 years is about 1%. So over time, we've grown about 2%. Now we're going to be growing for 1%. This is, once again, information that we shared with you in October. We've adjusted the actual enrollments by, I think, five or so. We had some corrections made to those numbers, and it shows that the Les Kendrick medium range projection are the most accurate this year, as they've been for a couple years now. And it also shows that the OSPI numbers were less accurate than our medium range projection. This is some interesting information provided by Les Kendrick, and this goes along with the next slide too. This one shows the Snohomish County Public School District enrollments from 2004 to 23, and I put on those triangles, and with the note that is right to the right of that chart, and it says COVID set Snohomish County Public School enrollment back 20 years, and to the year 2000 enrollment levels, and it's projected to recover from that to be back up to pre-COVID numbers by about 2030. So effectively, it pushed Snohomish County Public School enrollments, the whole county, back about 30 years. And this slide then is the same information, only the Everett Public Schools. So it shows that from that note up above on the right, it says that COVID set Everett Public Schools enrollment back 5 years to 2015, and that we're projected to recover by 2028, so that's a 13-year impact. What it illustrates is that the that Everett Public Schools is going to be less impacted, it has been less impacted by COVID than other county school districts and will recover more quickly than other school districts in the county. This chart here shows the Everett Public Schools share of Snohomish County enrollments over a long period of time. And what I wanted to show you, or just kind of point out to you, in 2004, our percent of the county enrollment was 17%, and right now we're at 18.4%. So if you take all the enrollment in the county, our share of that has grown over time. In the last year, we actually saw a drop from 18.5 to 18.4. We'll see how that turns out, where the trend is going. But that's a very healthy trend for us. And then this slide shows percentage of the change in enrollment by school district from about 10 or 12 of our neighbors. And I'm going to point out a few, as I did a year ago when we did the same thing. Marysville shows a fairly big decline, and it did last year as well. Index is showing a healthy increase on this chart, and Darrington is also showing a fairly healthy increase. Everett is almost not measurable on this, it's 0.1%. So this then shows the actual number of students that have changed since last year. So it reflects the previous slide in the sense that Marysville's enrollment is fairly negative. It has declined quite a bit. Index, that, I'm going to go back to the previous slide, that big change, 8.7% in index, is actually 2 students. I pointed that out last year and even went back and listened to the video of it today. It was the Johnson family left town last year. I think they've moved back because there are two additional students. Last year it was 3 students decline. And Everett has increased by 24, Edmonds by 95, and then Lake Stevens by 119. So those are, and Mukilteo by 124. This slide here shows the annual net change in enrollment by county since 2013 for the 4 counties in the Puget Sound area. I wanted to point out the scale of these charts is not the same for each of the 4 charts. So the King County, the chart goes up to 10,000, Kitsap goes up to 2,000, Pierce goes to 7,000, Snohomish to 5. So you can't look at them in comparison with each other visually. You can compare schools within the county to each other. But what I did want to point out that was important is that the only county that increased this last year was Snohomish County. The other 3 counties actually experienced a decline. So again, that's a good trend for our schools in this area. Les Kendrick produces 3 projections, the high, medium, and low, with a fairly complex methodology that we've been relying on for many years. OSPI also produces a less complex methodology, and you'll see in a minute they're actually predicting quite a negative trend over the next 6 years, in contrast to Les Kendrick's projections. And then we also have a population-based forecast that we use when we go out beyond 10 years, that looks at population and has the relationship between population and our enrollment, and uses that to predict enrollment over time beyond 10 years. So this is a population forecast for the Everett Public Schools. So I wanted to point out that the only actual numbers that they can verify are the census numbers, the population that they have actually gone out and counted people, which happens on the every 10 years. So the most recent census was 2020, and the next one will be 2030. So other than that, the years from 2020 to now, we have to use an estimated number, and then from now out into the future, we use a projected number. So, assuming all this happens as we expect, we will be growing for the next 10 years at about just under a 1% rate. So again, historically, it's been 2% for many years over a long period of time. For the next 10 years at about a 1% rate. So that shows a growth of about 14,200 students over the next 10 years growth for us. This, I'm going to show you a 1 year, then a 6 year, and then a 10-year projection. And these slides show the low, medium, and high projections from Kendrick. I've highlighted in a dashed red line the middle section of the chart, which is the it's the Les Kendrick medium projections. And those are the ones that we use mostly in facilities, and then also that's the starting point for the projections used by the budget development process as well. So over the next year, it shows that we're total change in our enrollment. K-12 is 43 students increase. You'll see we're predicting a small decrease at elementary, it's a pretty large increase at middle, and then a decrease at high school. By the time you get 6 years out, you're looking at increases at all grade levels. 148 elementary, 423 middle, and 395 at high school. And then by the time you're out 10 years, you're at 1,506 students K-12 district-wide for the medium range projection. And I wanted to give you some context for that. Those increases that you see in the 10-year outlook equal about 18 classrooms additional at the elementary level, 19 classrooms at the middle school level, and 27 at the high school. A typical elementary school has about 35 or so classrooms, 30 to 35. In the next 6 years, we expect to spend about $5.9 million on portable classrooms. And then if you go out 10 years, a total of 10 years, our plan, based on an analysis, we've done a long-range plan of capacities and enrollments and portables, and we expect that we'll be spending about $10 million over the next 10 years moving and buying portables based on the enrollments that we're seeing. So what I've just shown you in chart form, I'm going to show you now real quickly in a graph form. You can see the high, medium, and low projections from Les Kendrick go out 10 years. OSPI only goes out 6. And there you'll see OSPI's projections that are a negative downward trend. The dashed horizontal line shows our permanent building capacity at the elementary level. We are showing 2 times where it increases. That is, in 2026, that represents the increase in capacity at Jackson Elementary School. When we replace that, we'll be adding classrooms there. And then also in 28, when we increase the capacity at Madison, that's when you see the bump up in capacity. So just to characterize this, I will say what's pretty obvious, and that is that our enrollments far exceed our building capacity, our permanent building capacity. So the number of portables we have at the elementary level is 95 right now, district-wide. Here's the middle school, and I'm going to characterize it by saying the capacity and the permanent buildings at our middle schools is about the same as our enrollments. We have 28 portables at middle schools right now. And this is high school, and this shows that we have permanent building capacity well in excess of our enrollments at high school, but I think we all know that there's an anomaly there, and that is that the extra space is in the far north end, and the overage in students is in the south end. So we still have Jackson High School. Even with this extra space, we have Everett High with extra space available in Jackson High School over capacity, because that's where a lot of those students are located. And then this is district-wide, and it shows it all combined into one. And then finally, a quick snapshot of the accuracy of the projections. This shows that the medium range projections are the most accurate. They were this last year. Prior to that, we had 4 years where just after COVID, the low range projections were more accurate, and then before then, it was pretty consistently more accurate at the medium range levels. I'm going to make one final comment here, just to point out something that I was asked about a couple days ago, and that is, if you look in the 2019 column, you see the accuracy of the one-year low-range projections was 110 students off. And in the medium-range projections, it was 92 students off. One was under, one was over. And we know that 110 isn't equal to 92, but we've identified the difference as 5% in both of those. And it has to do with the rounding error, not a rounding error, a rounding of the numbers. So on the upper chart, we were just under 5.5%. And then in the lower chart, it was just above 4.5%. So when you round up or down, you get 5% for both.
Isn't that a 0.5% versus 5%?
Yeah, I'm sorry, 0.5%. You're right.
Sorry.
You're correct. That's right. Thank you for that. And then next steps, as we always talk about, we have already developed the projections for staffing based on this, and we're hard at work on the portable plans. And we're going to be using that. In fact, we've used that already, the projections for enrollment, to come up with our preliminary budget projections. And then we'll be using all that to actually finalize those plans and get ready to go into all those processes using that information between now and August in preparation for next year. With that, I'm glad to answer any questions.
Are there any questions?
Just a quick thank you very much. I really appreciate the overview and the use of the enrollment. When boundary changes, when it's determined that a boundary change might be needed to accommodate enrollments, is it more of an art or a science? I imagine it's a little bit of both.
It is a little of both. We have a range of options to address growing enrollments with, and the most challenging one is passing a bond, and the easiest one is to move a portable. And there's all sorts of options in between there. Somewhere in the middle is our boundary changes. And we do anticipate over a 10-year period that we may be coming forward with some minor boundary adjustments, but nothing like right away.
Go ahead, Caroline.
Question, just something that caught my eye was the middle school enrollment is fairly flat going out into the future a little bit. But you mentioned that we have 20-some portables, I think.
Yes.
Is that a similar South End, North End kind of situation where South End is a little more overcrowded?
Well, we do have space at North Middle School, and I think just about all of our other middle schools do have portables at them. And what tends to happen is when you have space at a school and you have portables available, then you end up getting special programs located there. So schools will typically find a way to use the portables. And then even if they don't necessarily have all the enrollment that they need to place in those portables. So then we get some schools that on paper, by the math, would appear to not need the portables, but they really do because we have really important programs located there. So having said that, we do track, of course, portables at each school and compare that to enrollments, and then we also take into account special program needs at those schools.
Thank you.
Roman?
Can I ask just a quick question
Yes.
about the process? I loved reading the report. Just out of curiosity, there's a lot of data and inputs, but data-wise, but I wonder about other qualitative things that where we are aware of and how that impacts his work in developing these projections. And the thing that I think about the most, or that comes to mind the most, is we know that we're going to get more ships here at Naval Station Everett. And just out of curiosity, you know, how do you incorporate qualitative things like that that we know are coming? Not that, you know, every sailor has a kid in school, but, you know, just thinking about the qualitative aspects that we anticipate changing.
Yeah, you know, we try to identify as many data sources as we can for less, and then we provide that to them. I can tell you, just to address specifically the naval ships, is we actually don't have a lot of naval housing in our school district. They tend to go to the outlying school districts that have less expensive housing.
Right.
But if you look at that and also add in other businesses that are building here and multifamily housing, certainly, we do keep an eye on that. We get information on those developments from the cities and the county and provide that information to Les Kendrick when he does his work. And so that is what we do. But there is certainly a uncertainty around some of the projections. So enrollment projections, I made the reference that it was similar to predicting the stock market, and in some ways it is. The further you go out, the more uncertainty there is. And so we try to keep an eye on everything.
Any other questions or comments? All right. Thank you, Mr. Gunn.
Thank you.
That moves us on to section 14.0, unfinished business, and there is none for this meeting. In section 15.0, new business, and Mr. Fleckenstein, I believe you have two policies for us.
Yes, thank you, and good evening. Both policies are actually linked. First, revisions to policy 3110, age of attendance, are proposed this evening to incorporate the entrance qualifications language from our existing policy 3111, entrance qualifications. And in doing so, this would align the WASDA's model policy numbering system, consolidating our two policies into one. The revisions include changing the title from age of attendance to entrance qualifications and age of admission. The proposed revisions to policy 3110, age of attendance, have been reviewed by legal counsel and the superintendent's cabinet prior to tonight's meeting.
Are there any questions? Great.
And related and similar to, staff proposed the deletion of policy 3111, entrance qualifications, as this language has been incorporated into the revisions presented tonight in 3110.
Are there any questions?
Not a question that needs to be answered right now, but I'm just curious the number of families who are doing the early start in kindergarten?
Early start or early entrance?
Early entrance, I should say.
Yeah. Dr. Bogan is prepared to give you some information in addition to what was provided in the Friday report.
Thank you. In the 23-24 school year, we had 52 applicants for early entrance and 0 students whose parent applied for early entrance met the qualifications through that process. We have 2 students who were entered in on appeal to that process, and the total cost for that was $27,513 this year in staffing and support costs. For context, in 2022-23 school year, we had 29 applicants for early entrance and only 1 student met the criterion, and that cost for that year was approximately $22,932 in staffing and support costs. So we have very, very few students over the last 6 years. We've spent about $133,000 over the last 6 years for an early entrance program with very, very few qualifying students. We attribute a lot of that to the kindergarten readiness programs that we have. We've really enhanced our early learning programs within partnerships with our community, Play and Learn, other opportunities like transitional kindergarten. We think that's been a significant factor in the reduction of early entrance.
Does that help?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so by general consent, we'll move these policies to second reading. So that now tonight, there is, let me start over. Section 17.0, executive or closed session.
Madam Chair.
Yes.
16.
Oh my gosh, thank you. Switching pages, getting too anxious. Section 16.0, upcoming agenda items. Dr. Saltzman, what is planned for our upcoming agenda items?
Thank you, Madam Chair and Board of Directors. At the March 19th Board Work Study Session, board members will participate in Strategic Progress Monitoring Session number 3. On March 21st, 2024, at the March 21st special meeting, Board of Directors will attend the annual State of the Everett Address. At the regular meeting on March 26, 2024, the regular agenda contains the following: iReady Diagnostic Winter Results, Advanced Placement College and the High School Dual Enrollment Update, several policies for second reading, the second quarter financial report, and budget development update, and the February financial report. Thank you, Madam Chair and Board of Directors.
Yeah, thank you. Now, yes.
Do we have a special meeting being published on Thursday?
Do we have a special meeting?
For the Everett Public Schools Foundation? Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay, so we'll move on to section 17.0, executive or closed session. Tonight, there is no executive session. Immediately following this regular meeting, the board will hold a closed session to discuss bargaining, which brings us to item 18.0, or adjournment. This concludes the March 12th, 2024 regular meeting of the Everett Public Schools Board of Directors. The meeting is now adjourned, and we will meet up in the